Hi, everyone. I'm Whit Baird. I'm a customer success manager at Quali. And today we're going to be talking about disclosures, COI and COC disclosures in our COI module. And I'm going to mostly be focused in the system, walking through kind of the process of creating and filling out a process. I'll talk a little bit about the review process as well. So I'm going to look at things more from an end user perspective. I know Victor did some system administration training earlier in the week. So that was more focused on the admin side. And so this is going to be more of the end user focus. So I'm not really going to stick with the slides as much. I am going to actually escape out and go directly to our disclosures module. So and talk about what we see there. So this is our COI module, and I'm logged in as someone that is just a researcher or faculty member at the institution. So an end user of our COI module. So, a number of different actions may prompt a person to come in and fill out their disclosure. Maybe they were added to a research project, or maybe their previous disclosure has expired. So in this example, there was a researcher who was actually added to new projects in our sponsored programs module. So you can see there's a note here that they need to actually disclose because of those new projects, and they need to actually go into their disclosure and put a disposition, uh, surrounding those new projects that were added in sponsored programs. So when a person logs in, they first see just the various disclosures that they have previously submitted, and it then allows them to update their disclosure. So I'm going to go ahead and go here, and it brings us into our form. This is kind of one of our out of the box forms that we have for customers. If you're familiar with our COI module and the configurations around it, this is completely configurable. We have, form builder functionality that allows you to create your own questions and really tailor this to your own COI policies that you have at the institution. So, certainly, if there are additional things you need to do, and you have the COI module, you can make additional updates. So when I come in to my disclosure form, you're first taken to this kind of introduction form, and this really just shows some basic information about COI. You can put things about your COI policy here so that people can see what it is they're doing. What is this COI thing, and why am I doing it? So you can add that information here on this introduction page. The other thing to note is on this introduction page, we have a display of training data. So you can move training data from your sponsored programs module to COI and display that here. You can also, if you have an integration with City, you can pull that into that training module for display to be here. So in this example, this person has actually done their PHS COI training, and it's valid until till October 31st of this year, and that's displaying here. But if it was not on file, there would be a note here that they need to go to City and do their actual training. The one thing to note with COI is in our disclosure forms is that It is built upon the concept of progressive disclosure. So depending on the questions that you answer in some of the later pages, it will then ask additional questions. Um, and the reason why you want to focus on that progressive disclosure functionality is because if you have someone that doesn't have anything to disclose, um, and they don't have any outside entities that they work with or they own stock in or anything, you want to get them through the form as quickly as possible. So if someone doesn't, if someone answers a lot of questions no, they don't have any outside interests, you can get them through this form fairly quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, and it's going to take me to what we have in terms of a research conflict of interest form. So it has a number of questions that, gating questions to see if you do have any kind of outside interest. So, this first question, these questions, come from kind of the NIH regulations around conflict of interest. But if you have different things in your policy, maybe your thresholds aren't as much, you could configure these questions to have different thresholds. So the first question asks if you received any aggregated compensation exceeding $5,000. If you select yes, um, yes to that, it's gonna, to that question, it's gonna ask further questions on down the road through that progressive disclosure that I previously talked about. And it's the same thing with these additional questions. Did your family members have any ownership? Do your, and then the third one, do your family have any ownership in a non-publicly traded entity? And again, this, the answering positive to this will force you to answer questions on the outside entity form there. I'm just going to pause for a moment. I know I've been talking for the duration. If anyone's had any questions about anything, it doesn't look like there's anything on the chat currently. So I think I'll keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. I answered positive to one of the questions. And then I have this general form here. The first question is kind of a gating question that we have on here. And this kind of can show you some of the progressive disclosure that we have here. So if I were, this first question asks if you're a university employee. And basically what that means is they only want to, they only want to have someone disclose on this general form if they if they are actually a university employee. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes here. And again, we have a number of gating questions for the COI and conflict of commitment on this page as well, which will also trigger the need to disclose on any outside entities. So for example, if I were to say NA and were to answer no to everything, then I wouldn't have any additional questions or anything to disclose. But since I'm just going to say I teach. That will require me to disclose any outside entities. There are also some follow-up questions here, around patent applications or influence over university employees. And, a general question at the bottom that allows you to explain, do you have any potential conflicts that, that might um, you know, conflict with your interests with the university. So again, these templates are and these questions are completely configurable. Um, depending on your COI or COC policies that you have in place, you can adjust these questions and how they display on the forms um, to tailor completely to your institution. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next page. Oops. You can see in our module, it makes any required fields, it makes sure that you answer those appropriately. So I'm just going to put something in here. So it'll allow me to go to the next page. So this next page is around outside entities. So, so anyone that you're actively, working with, or you have stock with, or you do speaking engagement with, you need to disclose what those outside entities are um, on this form, on this list action here. And the good thing about this is every time you go in to disclose, your entities that you have previously disclosed are all going to be here and display on this form for you. So it looks like I had a couple that I had previously disclosed. I'm going to go ahead and add a new one, and you would do that by adding a line. So I'm just going to say, let's see, that I work with Pfizer. It's a for-profit, publicly traded company. Describe the entity or the business of the entity. And then you need to dig down a little deeper to describe what the actual relationship that you have with that entity. So in order to do that, you would click on this add info. The first thing you want to do is identify who the person is. So it could be yourself, but you also want to disclose anything for your spouse or dependents or anyone else within a close relationship. So I'm just going to choose self. And then there are specific types of relationships that you can have. Is it an IP relationship, or do you have a position with that entity? Do you own it? Are there other activities, or was travel involved? And depending on what the answer that you have for that, it actually changes um, the questions that you have appropriately. So say I have ownership in Pfizer, it will ask me certain questions around the ownership. So what kind of ownership is it? Is it stock options, or other? And so because I chose stock, it then gives me a number of items in a drop down here to see how much, so that you can report how much stock that you have in that entity. So I'm going to go ahead and click done. But I can have multiple relationships with that entity. Maybe I'm also have a position with Pfizer as well. So I can report that. I can put offices, and you can see again the questions change. Maybe I'm a manager in that. Let me see here. Maybe I'm a partner. And you can also select an amount for that, if it's paid or unpaid. You can choose if it's a one-time thing or if it's an ongoing contractual position. And you can describe, it's more for the time commitment. And I can click done. So I was able to report all of the different relationships that I had with Pfizer. You can choose if this entity does sponsor your research. So does this entity sponsor any of the research? I can select yes or no. You can describe the activities. There are additional questions. Are you using university personnel or resources? I'm just going to say no. Are there any products or services? I'll say no to this. And I'm going to just say no in terms of attachments and click done. So I've added all my entities and now it takes me to kind of a project view of everything. And so this person, it looks like this person is involved with a number of different projects. This is a demo environment, so we've probably been adding this person a bunch to different projects on the sponsored program side. So when this person, so Brent Webb, was added as an investigator in sponsored programs, those projects then pushed across to our COI disclosures module and display here so that Brent can actually put a disposition on each one of those projects. So you can see if you open up one of these projects that that it shows the project. You can link out to the project to give some data about the project. You can go view the project if you want. And then at the bottom, basically it takes your entities and says, is this project related to any of those outside entities? So you can go through here and say, that they're unrelated, or if it is related, you can say, what exactly you're doing and why it's a conflict. And you can put that all in here as well. So there are a bunch of different projects in here. I'm just going to go ahead and just say they're unrelated so I can move forward. Sorry, I had a bunch of projects here. All right. So it now shows me that I'm good. I've disclosed, I've done my dispositions on all my projects, and said that they were unrelated to the entities I had, except for one of those. So I'm going to go ahead and click the next button. And this is just a certification page that we have. Um, it just says by clicking submit, you're acknowledging, that you've understand all the university policies around conflict of interest, um, and and um, and that you're and you understand everything and that you certify. Just take a quick pause there, to see if anyone has any questions on the form. Again, just want to continue to reiterate that, this form is completely configurable by each institution. Um, if you were to implement the disclosure model, it could look completely different from this depending on your COI policies. All right, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going.
You know what, Whit, there
What?
actually is a question just
Okay.
now, a request to go back to where the disclosure can edit.
Where a disclosure can do which? I'm sorry.
Sorry, go back to where the disclosure can edit the form. Pardon my dog in the background.
Oh, I mean, you can edit the form at any point, in this. So there are a lot of different spots where you can edit it. So this whole form is completely open, open for edits. So if any of these questions change, you can make any updates here. So on all of these different pieces are editable until you actually submit that. So you can change any answers to these questions. You can add any outside entities. You can change your declarations. So it's all editable at every point in this time. I don't know if there was any specific spots.
There's a follow-up with, can it be edited after submission?
No, it cannot. So what would happen is, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this. So this was the next thing I was going to show. So if you submit your form, so I'm Brent Webb, I'm done with this. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. You have this ability here to request to edit and notify the administrator. So say you forgot about, one of the entities that you had, or, there was something additional that you needed to add, or something just came up and it was still under review. You can click this button to request to edit it. The administrator will get a notification and they can send it back to you at that point in time.
There is another question.
Okay.
The question is, how do you determine the % complete if the length of the questionnaire changes based upon the disclosure's responses?
Oh, wow. I don't even, I actually am not exactly sure on that one. I don't know if Victor has any information on how that's actually technically done in the background.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. The % complete is a pretty straightforward number. It takes the number of pages on the disclosure and divides it to get percentage. So if you had 10 pages, each page would represent 10%. That's obviously an estimated number. It's just meant to kind of give some general guidance. So I don't believe it updates as soon as progressive display is fulfilled, but it does update when you hit next. So if you started out and you had answered, all no's on your initial sort of screening questions, it might say, you're half done, you're 2/3 done, depending on how your form is set up. But then if you answered yes when you hit next, it would take you to the appropriate next page and that percentage would update. So depending on your form, in theory, that percentage number could go down. But it doesn't happen very often.
Thanks, Victor. All right. Looks like we're out of questions. So, I submitted it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and show the administration point of view for this disclosure now that it has been submitted. So once it's submitted, it can go to, you can configure your system for it to go straight to a reviewer. So say you need department, a department admin or department head to approve the disclosure. You can have them be immediately set as a reviewer so that they can review and approve your disclosure. But I'm just going to go in as a COI administrator who has gotten this disclosure submitted to the COI office. So I'm going to sign out and sign back in as my administrator. And so as you can see, now that I'm an administrator, I have a number of different options here. There's the ability to manage projects and do configurations. I'm not going to focus on those, but where I want to go is to this review disclosures piece here. And so this allows you to kind of search and almost report on all of the disclosures that are coming into your office. So it looks like I have a filter set up to look for all of the, I must have it on resubmitted status. But what I want to do is update my filter to say that it has been submitted for approval. And when you're working with these filters, you can save them. So maybe I want a filter of all my submitted for approval disclosures as an admin. I can save that and save that as a filter. So that's my submitted for approval. And you can see that that Brent Webb, that submission that I previously worked on, is now here and it's been submitted. So it's got the February 24th date attached to it. So I now have the ability to review that disclosure, which has been submitted to the COI office. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Brent's and kind of show all the actions that I have as a COI admin. So the one thing to note is that the COI admin gets a view-only view of the disclosure form. So they're able to see everything that we had previously submitted. They can't edit anything, but what they can do is provide any comments on that. And I'll show in a bit how you can comment that on those. The other thing you have is the ability to a number of different actions. The first thing, the ability to approve it. So if there's no significant interest that you see or issues, you can go ahead and approve that. We have a send back to revise. So in the send back to revise, so say you write a bunch of comments on there, you can use that send back to revise so that the investigator can respond directly to those comments that you put in there. And I'm going to demo that here in a second. You have a return button, a little bit similar to the send back to revise, but the return button kind of sends it back in a completely editable format. You have the ability to assign reviewers as the admin. So, if there's someone additional that you think needs to review it, or maybe you're kind of acting as a triage person, you can take a look and use this assign reviewers that are here. And you can also you can also, unassign any reviewers that are already here. But if I were to click here, I can see, let me see, I can find a person and add them as a reviewer and unassign them. And that reviewer would obviously get notified that they've been added as a reviewer to this disclosure. You can add any administrative attachments. So if there's any attachments that you want to add to this, you can do that through the admin attachments. If you're a reviewer and you just wanted to complete your review, that's that complete review. Once I start entering in comments, I can preview the comments. I can also get a print version of this. So this just gives you a nice printed version of the entire application. And then if later in the process you decide that this requires a management plan, you also have an activity to add that management plan to the disclosure itself. So what I'm going to do is act as the administrator or reviewer and add some comments to this just to be able to see kind of the back and forth functionality that we have in this system. So I'm just going to write a couple comments. And you can make the comments visible to either the reporter or the reviewers or both. I'm just going to save the comment. And X out of that. You can go through and you can go to each one and comment. So maybe you have a comment on, you need more information about one of the entities. So it looks like in this one, I just put in a bunch of random comments here and I want to get more information about that. And actually gonna make this here. So now I can go up and see, I can preview all the comments that are on here. So you can take a look at all the comments that were done. So if another reviewer came in here, you could see their comments as well. So at this point in time, okay, I have a bunch of different things that I found in my review. So I need to send it back to the disclosure to actually revise and to react to the comments that I put on here. So I'm going to click this send back to revise. And it just gives you a confirm button here for that as well. So I'm going to quickly go out and come back in as my disclosure. And you can see as the disclosure comes back in, you can see that it was sent back to them and that revisions are required for this disclosure, that changes need to be made. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And you can see when you open this up, it's not in a completely open editable format, that each item here is editable by clicking on these edit buttons here. And the one thing to note is that it won't let you resubmit until you actually respond to any comments that are made by either the reviewer or the admin. So those two items that I had previously are listed here, and it won't let me resubmit until I actually respond to those specific questions. So you can either click here, and what it does when you click here, it opens the question directly for you. And you can just say, Sorry for my very simplistic answers to these questions. But you can just quickly respond to the question and save it. You can see over here, that actually that item goes away and you don't have to respond to that either. You can also go, directly to the question where there are comments and view them there. So this, you can see that the COI admin wants you to provide more info about the entity. So I need to go in here and say, here are even more details. And I'm going to go ahead and click done. And if I scroll up to the top, I now have responded to all of the questions that I have. So I now have the ability to either save it, and if I want to come back, or I can go ahead and have this resubmitted. So I'll go ahead and resubmit this. And again, you get you still get this item where if you need to pull it back for edits, you still have that option as well. So I'm going to go back in as my admin, and I have I'm in my review disclosures filter here. And I'm in my submitted for approval filter. So you can see the item for Brent Webb isn't here. And that's because the status is going to be slightly different for his disclosure. So I'm just going to create a new filter, click add rule, where disclosure status is equal to resubmitted. And I'm going to do that. The other thing I can do with these filters I didn't show earlier, you can add various columns. So if I want to see what the last action is and what the last action date is, I can show that here, so that it's all here for my filter. So I can create another filter for all of my resubmitted disclosures. And click save. So now I'm here on my recent. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that there is a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are the disclosures tied to projects in KR proposals and awards?
They are. They are. That was. I had showed that previously, and I'll show it again under the review process. Those projects in KR, depending on how you have things configured, depending on what type of project it is, what kind of sponsor it is, what kind of personnel they are, if they're a PI versus a key investigator, those projects can all be pushed into the disclosure, and you can put a disposition on that project to see if there is a conflict. So I'm going to go back into Brent's form. What you can do now that he's submitted back, you can see, you can go into the preview comments to see that, he provided additional information around that. If I were to go through the form, you can see any, you can go ahead and look and see any changes that are made. And then you can also, the other thing you can do is you can also look at versions of it. So it does keep the version history of, where it was before and how it is and how it is now. So it does keep that complete version history, so that February you know, that previous version is what was originally submitted. So what I'm going to do now is go down to my project dispositions to make sure as an admin, you know, I put in my specific disposition on these projects. So, and again, these dispositions are configurable, what you want to do. So the admin can put a disposition here. If a reviewer, if someone other than the admin was reviewing it, they can put their recommendation in terms of what it is. So maybe this one is a managed conflict, and then it records who exactly put it as a managed conflict. Another thing you can do instead of going, you know, I have 14 projects here. I can go ahead and use this change all project disposition to actually, you know, maybe all of them have no conflict. So I just want to quickly be able to say that all my projects have no conflict. That would, for all of my items, that would change the admin disposition to no conflict for that as well. I'm actually going to change this one back to a managed conflict. Oops. You know, I can change it back to a managed conflict. Let's say I'm done with my review, and you know, and I've done everything. You know, at this point in time, you know, maybe we've, you know, I've met with the committee and we've come up with a management plan. You can add that management plan directly here and attach that, so that it would be visible to everyone, including the reporter. And I can go ahead and actually approve the protocol at this point in time. Or sorry, the disclosure at this point in time. And then you can confirm the overall disposition on the disclosure and click update. And it'll give you a couple of confirmations here. So now that one has been approved with a managed conflict. The one thing to note that I don't know if I mentioned earlier, if everybody answers no to all the gating questions, this whole process of an administrative review does not have to exist. You can configure your system to automatically approve your disclosures that have all negative answers to your questions. So if they don't have any, if they don't have any outside entities, you can have them automatically approve. So you don't have to worry about, manually going in and approving. So, typically institutions, 90+% of disclosures can be automatically approved. So you don't have to go through that process. So that's the whole kind of end-to-end process and what I was going to demo today. So I wanted to leave the remaining time for any questions that I can answer and potentially show you guys anything that I went over probably too quickly. All right. Well, if no one has any questions, we'll go ahead and end a few minutes early so you can have a break before your next session. Feel free to rate the session and feel free to reach out to Victor or I if you have any questions on our COI disclosures module.
Thank you very much.
And have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the Qualidays presentations.